G'day guys and welcome to this business management lesson. In today's lesson we're looking at key knowledge point 133. That is unit 1, area of study 3 and the third key knowledge point for this area of study. Today specifically we're looking at societal attitudes and behaviour such as values, beliefs and trends and what that means for business planning. Now as with the previous key knowledge point and the next 4, this key knowledge point specifically is dealing with factors from the macro operating environment of business that affect business planning. When it comes to societal attitudes, values, beliefs, and trends, this is one of those things that your business is unlikely to have any control over. Some businesses might have some influence over this sort of thing. For example, if you are one of the really well-known fashion labels, Versace or Prada, and you're heavily involved in Paris Fashion Week, the clothes that you demonstrate on your catwalks might have some influence over global trends in fashion for a little while. But no one business has the same control over any of the macro environment forces that they have over the forces from the operating environment, or certainly the forces from their internal environment. So that's what unifies all these macro environment forces, just in case you've forgotten that from the first key knowledge point in this area of study. Now, when it comes to societal attitudes, we are talking very much about the things that people believe and the things that people value, which do change over time. If we consider broadly what has changed within our lifetimes, it's easy to see how this is how fashion has changed. Certainly, when I was a kid, well, when I was a teenager, emos were very, very popular. Everybody wanted to grow out their fringe and wear skinny black jeans. And then certainly more recently, the whole hipster movement encouraged men to grow beards and wear flannel, and that was far more popular. Trends change over time. Even things like fidget spinners, for a period of time within living memory, those were ridiculously popular and everyone had to have one. And just as quickly as they came, they went, and I haven't seen a fidget spinner for probably a couple of years now. As fashions change, so too can any values or belief systems. And as these change over time, the way that your business appeals to and markets to customers is going to have to change as well. Certainly, the products that you're offering need to be reflective of and in line with trends as they change over time. For example, if you had a clothing store when emos were the rage, you might have sold skinny black jeans and Converse shoes, studded belts, that sort of thing. By the time we get to more recent years, if you still had a clothing store when hipsters were the rage, aviator sunnies, Ray-Ban sunnies, that kind of look, flannel shirts, more baggy jeans, mustache combs, that sort of thing is going to have been far more popular, and your business will have had to change what it's offering the market to stay competitive. If we consider too how things change over time, we can look for case studies of businesses who've got it wrong. Now, one of the great staples of Australian cuisine is Vegemite. I'm a big fan. And in about 2009, Vegemite had a competition. They'd come out with a new product that was a cream cheese and Vegemite spread. And the competition was to suggest a name for the product. Now, if you know anything about the year 2009, you would know that the iPhone 3G was all the rage. It was really the first iPhone that had sort of exploded in popularity and made Apple the modern mobile phone behemoth that they are today. The iPhone 4 came out in 2010, so we're really talking right at the beginning of iPhone's popularity. The iPod was incredibly popular. And it just so happens that the name that was suggested and accepted for the first version of this Vegemite cheese spread was iSnack 2.0. And immediately, you're probably thinking, that's a pretty rubbish name. And the general consensus from the community feedback was that, yeah, this was a terrible bloody name. And Vegemite, almost as soon as they'd released it, decided to run a second competition to rename the product, and they settled on Cheesy Bite. And it stayed Cheesy Bite for quite some time, but it's interesting to note that very recently Vegemite rebranded this once again, and now if you go into your local supermarket and look for this, you'll find Vegemite and cheese on the shelf. So just let that be a lesson to you that if you are ignorant of community trends, values and fashions, that sort of thing, and you make a bad decision, not only will people not buy your product, but you might actually attract negative attention from the community. iSnack 2.0 was such an unpopular name with people that people who'd never thought about Vegemite in their lives were suddenly aware that Vegemite had a dumb name for their product. People who were never going to buy it now weren't buying it and were talking about how crap this name was. So that's worth being aware of. This is a pretty tame example of a business that has been ignorant of cultural trends, but there we go. Now, societal attitudes in a more important way than just naming your cheesy Vegemite spread have changed over time, and what that's looked like for business has been pretty significant. For example, if you operated a farm in North America in the earliest periods of settlement there, it's most probable your labor force were not entirely voluntary or paid for their work. We're talking slavery. It was legal at the time, and it culturally, or the cultural perception, while there were some people who disagreed, and certainly the American Civil War brought that to a head, but for certainly in some areas in the United States during that early settlement period, slavery was not even frowned upon. It was the norm. These days, globally, we've generally accepted that slavery is not kosher. We're not too tolerant of slavery-related practices. And certainly if we look to more modern sort of social movements, there's a growing trend of people who are very concerned about the climate and what climate change will mean for the future of populations and the future of humanity, future of our planet. And so we see a rising trend in things like veganism and economic and environmental awareness. Brands like Who Gives a Crap, brands like Thank You and The Body Shop, who are more sustainable and ethical in their impact on environmental issues, growing in popularity as customers are more concerned about these issues. And certainly in this growing trend of environmental concern, it's really important that business managers are aware of this and are responding appropriately because, and here is the truth, customers prefer to buy things from businesses that reflect the customer's own values. If you are, in your own life, slightly concerned about, or even very concerned, if you are concerned at all about the impacts of climate change and the impacts on humanity from environmental issues, you're unlikely to be buying your products from businesses that openly defy climate science. Or if you care very much about social justice issues, you're unlikely to buy products from businesses that make a mockery of the social justice issues that you care about. And likewise, if you are walking around thinking that these days people are too sensitive or too quick to try and cancel controversial figures, you're more likely to look for businesses that promote your own values as places for you to spend your money. Certainly too, beyond just changing trends and changing societal attitudes, we can look at the societal changes that can come from demographic changes. In 1998, in the late 90s, just before the turn of the century, only 13.5% of Australian households had internet access. Less than 20 years later, 86% of Australian households had internet access, and today that number is in the low 90s. It's still surprising to me that it's not 100%, but there you go. And we've got to consider that as the internet has become more ubiquitous, more widespread, and customers from all walks of life in Australia are more likely to have reliable internet access, business managers have to be aware of that and what it means for customers. And so suddenly, if you are thinking about how to market your business, and you know that 86% of Australian households have internet access, or at least 86% of households have internet access, and you know that fewer people these days are watching television or listening to the radio, and more people are getting their news from social media, then you might want to consider marketing your products on social media rather than the more traditional television and radio advertisements, if that's how your target demographic is accessing media. Certainly, as internet access has improved too, business owners need to be aware that the target demographic that they're chasing will have a different opinion of the internet. In the late 90s, it was probably this new and exciting thing that people were getting onto. By today, it's much more likely that your target market are more technologically aware, and we're more concerned about online scams and getting hacked, having your passwords stolen and your social media accounts tampered with, or worse still, your online banking accounts tampered with. And certainly data security is something that your target market are probably more concerned with today than they might have been 20 years ago. And as a business manager, once again, you need to be aware of that. You need to be able to respond accordingly. Now, in summary for this key knowledge point, societal attitudes change over time. And just as fashion changes over time, what society values in general will change over time. The hot button issues of the day will change over time, whether or not slavery should be legal in the mid 1800s, to whether or not trans athletes should be allowed to participate in sports, or whatever it is that is the main arguments going on in certain elements of the media. And if you are a business manager, you need to be paying attention to these things, because where your business will interact or intersect these issues, certainly if your business intersects fashions or trends, you need to be responsive. It's going to be no good if you are running a technology shop and you kept up with the change from typewriters to computers, and you kept up with the change from vinyl records to CD players. If the next thing is some great development in VR and we all move away from laptops and iPads and computers to wearing goggles and, I don't know, whatever it is in the future, if your business doesn't keep up with those changes, your business will fall behind and lose its market share, regardless of the fact that it has kept up for so long. So all you need to take away from this key knowledge point really is that trends change over time, and a smart business manager will keep up. Customers prefer to buy products from businesses that reflect the customer's own values. And if you are going to target a broad demographic of people, you need to be reflecting the broad societal attitudes of the day to remain competitive in the market. That's all for today. See you next time.